All right. So I'm assuming you all filled out attendance already, so that is good. And I won't present yet because you'll see. But yeah, okay. So intermediate track, we're doing single file components today. Has to do with Node and npm. Actually, before I start, yeah, I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention last week, but 2 weeks ago, we went over, what? Okay, I don't know if that was weird. But okay, so remember when we were binding to that class thing, you guys asked how to dynamically change classes. So this is the actual correct way to do it. I changed it after class, just in case you haven't seen it. It's in the lesson 3 branch. Here's the HTML for it. You don't bind to a JavaScript variable that holds a string that can change value. You bind it to a method that will return a JSON object. And I have a good note here, but basically, here's a syntax. You return a key value pair for each class that you want to include, and that value is true or false. So that's the correct way, even though our way worked, this is the industry standard way. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then from last week, here is checkpoint 2. I added, me and Ashant added some stuff. And here's a complex example on how to take the text in a text field, like an input element, and transfer it straight to the Vue instance without having to use vbind, I believe. Let's see. Here it is. Okay, so I have what's being demonstrated, and basically I also demonstrated the syntax for like the most complex way to emit and view, I guess. So on key up, we can send variables, we can send strings, and we can send the actual event. This is how you explicitly receive like the event data that comes with the key press event or the key up event. Because normally you wouldn't include like the parentheses or any of the parameters at all, and it would just, the emit text method would automatically receive the event object. But here, when you include other variables, you have to include that $sign emit event. So that's the syntax for that. For that clear stuff up there. And depending on your use case, it might be better to just have it be within that one component, like I was saying earlier. But yeah, that's all the review from last week and the week before. Okay, and so here's the overview of what we're doing. So we are here, and just to reiterate, this is lesson 3, this is lesson 4, and then there is a lesson 5 for the basic track, but they're doing a different type of NoSQL, and that will take place between our week 2 and 3. So that is their lesson 5. So that's why this is lesson 6, in the GitHub. So it's kind of confusing, but just look out for lesson 6, and this will be lesson 7 and lesson 8, I believe. So yeah, that is naming on that. And once again, we have the office hours 6 to 7 every Wednesday. And all right, so I kind of already reviewed but got your V directives, and Vue is very useful to prevent repeated code. And here are the 5 V directives we're using. I think there are actually a few more. I looked in the documentation. Most of them have very unique use cases, but these are the main 5. And so we use event and props to communicate between components in the main instance. And now we are ready for NPM, which stands for the Node Package Manager. So the way we introduced Vue so far, it's not actually the industry standard way. Normally it's done with NPM and a Node.js pipeline. And basically that means NPM can do a lot of stuff for us. It'll compile and transpile the code to work with any browser, basically. And if you do not have NPM or Node.js, here is the download. And I didn't mention it before. You can catch it. The link to the slides is in Slack, and so is the GitHub. And once you have NPM and Node installed, you run this command. But I would suggest following these steps that we have constructed based on your operating system. There are some problems that come along with trying to do all this. So that's going to be the first checkpoint, is getting all this installed. And I'll go over this more in depth in a second. Actually, no, I think it'd be better to just do it now before I get into actually creating. Yeah, okay. So what you should be able to do after following this document is this. You should be able to do node version, npm version, and Vue version like this. Once you get these 3 printouts, you are good to go. You have it all installed. And this right here is how to go about it. I linked the node and npm download here. And let's see. Yeah, I think it'd be better if you all just did that real quick. I'll give it like maybe 10 minutes. I'll help you guys through it. Just try and download that right now. Just want to mention you don't have to have these exact version numbers. Just anything relatively current will work. So yeah, don't worry about it if that's not the same exact version. All right, it's been 5 minutes. Has anyone been able to get success getting npm and node installed by show of hands, just so I know? Okay, good. Okay, so does everyone in person have it installed? Do you have it installed? You didn't? Oh no, okay. Okay, cool. And how about online, Wallace? You get any success with getting npm and node installed? Tools for native modules. I don't. Oh, is that like some printout in the console when you're downloading npm or node? I'm guessing. Does anyone know? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, Wallace. Does that mean you're like, I guess, in the middle of downloading node or npm?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of download, like I'm in the setup part of Node.js, and it's like,
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah,
it's saying tools for native modules. Some NPM modules need to be compiled from C and C++ when installing. If you want to be able to install them, some tools, Python and Visual Studio build tools need to be installed.
Oh, is it an error or I'm not? Because I didn't get that when I was installing.
Because I clicked the Windows one in the LTS.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I'm on Mac, so I wouldn't be able to repeat it, but yeah, you clicked, what'd you click, 64-bit MSI, or did you do zip?
I just clicked the Windows at the top.
Oh, okay. What would that do? Oh, it does the MSI. Yeah, okay, cool.
Would that still work?
Yeah, that works.
So should I just let it do it automatically or not check it, or?
Yeah, I think, so are you saying you have an option, like you have stuff to click, or?
Yeah, it says optionally install the tools necessary to compile native modules.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So when doing it graphically, did any of you guys have options to check boxes to, what was it? Compile stuff. What was it again?
It's called tools for native modules.
Tools for native modules. So if you're doing it graphically, do you guys have options for that, and what'd you do? Okay. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, okay. If it's not right. Just do default. So don't check it. Yeah, you're good to go without it.
Just click next and ignore it.
Yeah, ignore it. Yeah.
Okay, next, install.
Sweet. And for everyone that does have Node and npm, just work on the Vue CLI. I think I do remember that one taking quite a lot longer than Node. Maybe not. Yeah, well, let's do that. Yeah, just make sure you get some version for both. Shows that it's installed. All right, while your guys' stuff is downloading, I'm assuming it'll take a while, so I'll work through the demo now. I think. Can I minimize this? Okay, great. I wanted to have my face up for the recording because if it's like this, then obviously my face won't be recorded. I guess it's fine. Okay, so once Vue's installed, you have one of these two options. I would suggest using Vue UI. Using an interface is always much nicer if you've never done it before. But sometimes there are problems with the UI versions, so I have done create before. So once the UI version is launched, you're gonna go to the create tab, select which folder you want, and press the create a new project here button. I think it's a green button down at the very bottom, kind of like this. And I'll run through this. So you give your project a name and leave everything else as defaults and selecting next. And we want the Vue 2. You could do Vue 3, but for now, since we taught it in the Vue 2 syntax, just use that. It's also the default preset, so that's fine. And then you're gonna click create project. And that by far is the longest thing. On Windows last night, it hung for over an hour. So I had to redo it using the Vue create way, I think. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you guys, but it happens. And after creation, you close the browser in the terminal window, and then you can open the folder in your text editor. I think that brings us. Okay. Oh yeah, and then you run this to get live reload, which is very nice. Okay, so now one. So if you do it, I think I already have it in here. So you run Vue UI. I have no existing projects, so you go to create, and you should get this to show up, list of directories that you can choose from. When I tried it on Windows, it took forever to load, like a long time. It took, I think, 10 minutes for some reason to grab all the possible folders, which is bizarre. Hopefully that doesn't happen. If it does, just click this little pencil thing and you'll have to manually input or go to your documents folder and select the address and then just paste it in here of where you want it saved. And that should speed it up. But for now, I'll just do my downloads. And this thing is in the way. Okay. So I'll do like test for now. You guys probably do this, in a more formal location. I've already done this once, so I'm just gonna be deleting this afterwards. But so you name it. Actually, if you're following along, name it week 4. I'll go ahead and do that because that's what it'll be for the checkpoint. In the package manager, leave that as default. And leave everything else as default and click next. And then you select the default preset, which is Vue 2. And then you click create project. And that is it. And this is a thing that can take, I'd say on average, it takes 10 minutes. So while this loads, I believe that brings us to the checkpoint. So yeah, now it is your guys' turn. Hopefully me and Nishant will help you get to this point. So I'm gonna move on for now while that's downloading in the background. Okay, so next we have single file components. So if you've never seen an NPM project, it can be very confusing. Basically what we have in here, what's outside of the source, you don't really need to worry about public. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I thought it was cool that this is the actual index HTML that Vue gives you, and it auto injects the files. So that's cool, but you never need to modify that. And then here's the README that's auto-generated with every Vue project. If you are cloning a repo that's made with Vue and you want to have live reload when you're developing, you do npm install, because that will take everything in your node modules folder. It'll create one from the package and package.json files, and yeah, then you run npm serve once that has run, and then npm run lint for linting. Let's see. And besides that, the rest are just other files that you don't need to worry about. Assets in here, this is like images and what else to say. Yeah, pictures, images. I don't really know what else would go in there. But in the components, so these are your Vue components. I know last week we created multiple components in one file, but now there has to be only one component per Vue file. So you see how each of these has a .vue extension. So you can only have one component in here, and I'll talk about it more later. But then there's the app.vue, which is the main Vue file, which is this. Basically, you're not going to have much logic going on in here. All you're doing is you're going to be putting in all the other components that you use, and you need to import them as well, which I'll talk about, and export them. When you want to add a new component, so you need to include it both in the template as well as the import statement and in your components of your exporting the main Vue instance component. And then the main JS file is used for npm. So you can see we are still mounting to the original div ID element. So that's pretty cool. Besides that though, you don't need to modify this. Okay, so like I said before, you have one component per file. And before we had, we couldn't use these template tags in our file. It had to be, like one long string. That's what we use those backticks for. But it's very nice now, because since we're using a .vue extension, you have code completion and syntax highlighting. So it makes development for HTML much easier, which is very nice. And then JavaScript goes within your script tags and style goes within your CSS. So now instead of 3 files, everything is contained in one file, one component per file. And everything that we've taught before, the V-directives and mustache formatting, it still works. And you can use nested components, which I'll show an example of that later. And CSS, it's still regular, as always. The only thing is, if you include the scoped, I don't know what you'd call it, like, I guess, keyword with the style tag, it will limit the styling to that component only. So if you have, like I said before, if you have nested components, then, and you don't use the scoped keyword, then all of the CSS styling for, let's say, for example, see how app has this styling right here. So the hello world component will be styled with all of these, because it waterfalls down since there's no scope here. But in the view, in the hello world view, it's scoped. So it limits the CSS to this component only. So even if there were nested components within this template, they wouldn't get this specific styling. Oh, lovely. I'll get to that. I'll have you probably share your screen in a bit when we get to the next checkpoint. So yeah, just hang on. Okay, that. All right, yeah. Okay, so JavaScript is an object-oriented language, and instead of classes though, they're called modules, and that's what the import and export statements are needed for. You export the properties of a module to use it elsewhere in your code. So each component, so like each file, it's its own module. So that is why we need the export and import. So these are all different, classes, you could say. And you get the properties from each of them, the template, script, and CSS properties. So, yep. And don't worry about the default keyword now. I think we're going to talk about that in one of the following weeks. And you still create a JavaScript object though with all the component information. So this is how you would create the instance for each component. And here is the new modified version of what you're going to use. The name is important because when you're importing and exporting components, this right here is what is in the name field. So scroll past it. So here we go. So this string right here. Notice it's in capital case now. It's not in kebab case. Sorry, that's because npm does the stuff for you, so you don't need to worry about breaking the document with kebab case anymore. So, and plus you can't even use kebab case because you need to use the name right here. So, and as a variable name, that's what breaks it. Sorry. So yeah, kebab case for the name, components. I think actually we run through this. Yeah, so the components, it's all the components you use in a template. It's used by npm to link the files. And the props, this is actually much different now. Before it was just an array of your props that would connect to the Vue instance, but now it is an actual object with key value pairs. So the key is the prop name like before, but now we explicitly define the type. And here's examples. And let's see, I think the rest, so everything else here is the same. The only thing before, data was, it was an anonymous function. We had data colon function parentheses blah blah blah, but now it has to be an actual, like an explicit function named data. And you still need to return a JSON object within this, and then the methods in computed are still the same. All right. So yeah, you must import the file, otherwise the nested component won't work. And to do that, at the top of the script section, you list all your import statements. You have to do all of your import statements before your export statement, because what's in the export statement depends on what you've imported. So I think it'll yell at you anyways if you try to compile without giving import statements. All right, and now we're ready for a demo 2. Okay, so here's the demo 2 template. We have mustache formatting going on. We've got a text field, and we have a button. It's pretty simple. This is the name of the element or the component. So what you have to do, you start by putting it in your template. And let me comment this one out as I go. Then you need to add the import statement. And then you add it into your list of components that will be used. And those are the 3 places that you need to add a component. And once you've done that, you would be able to load this. And I think, okay, so I'm in the week 4. So this is the name of the Vue project. And once you're in here, you do npm run serve. Lovely. Did I do it wrong? Oh, you're right. No, because it's way too big. Sorry, I forgot. You have to, let's see this. You have to run npm install. It's like 400 megabytes. So that wouldn't be good for the Git repo, but yeah, I forgot to mention, and I also forgot to do it. You have to run npm install. Actually, I did mention it before. If you're using a project that you didn't initially create yourself, you have to run npm install. And then the package and package lock files will create that node modules. And then you can run, I believe, the development server. Good catch, thank you. And then, so you'll click this, you can either control click on Windows or I guess Linux, and then command click on here. And it'll take you, so here is demo 2. And so this is the mustache formatting. So we passed in this text for the message prop. So here's how props work. Message, and here how it was, how it was defined, the key value pair, so that's new. And then initial, this is what's captured in the text field. So you have initial. So there you go, there's that. And then the counter goes up. So all this we've covered before. What's nice is we covered all the technical stuff the past 3 weeks, and now we're just covering the correct way to do it. So hopefully this all makes sense. And plus you have the code to look through it. So yeah, this is demo 2. The only thing, I guess, to replicate this, in your own projects, you just create a new file, and you can even, copy it from here and play around with it. So that's demo 2. And now here's checkpoint 2. So we're going to create 2 new Vue components and nest them within one another. So you'll have a wrapper, and within it, you'll have an item. So this is basically a start, like the exact start of your final project and the actual way it will be built, because we're doing it the correct way now. Well, the industry standard way. They both are correct. And for guidance, because this is pretty daunting, the to-do list is an example wrapper, and the to-do item is an example nested component. So see here, all it is just a list item, and here's how it's nested. So here's all the syntax. This was really helpful for me, wrapping my head around it the first time. And yeah, just play around with that, try to make it your own. I believe that's all I have. Yeah, so give feedback if you want. And now to the end of class, let's try to get Vue fully installed if you haven't already, and get an example. Actually, let me show you real quick. I'll show you what you should have, like a rough outline. Okay, I reload, that's nice. So here we go. So just test and then add. So there you go. That's the very good start to your final project. And probably what you do today in this checkpoint 2, you can use to create that final project that you're gonna be working on. So yeah, if you have any questions, we'll be here till 5:30. Until then, yeah, just continue working on it.